Hi, and welcome to Pop Rocks Radio. As always, I am your host, Bijan. You may notice something a little bit different today, namely my big ugly face, or as I prefer to refer to it, my rockstar good looks. Speaking of rockstar good looks, we have with us today a special guest for what I hope will become a recurring series here on Pop Rocks Radio, where I get to interview some of our favorite artists. And kicking that off for us today, well, let's have a look.
We're here in Zion, Illinois, asking people a very simple question. Excuse me, sir. What do you think about shoes?
About who?
Shoes.
Shoes. Is all right.
Some bands create magic by blending genres in unexpected ways. Other bands do it by using the studio to push the boundaries of sound. And then there's shoes. Taking their inspiration from artists like the Beatles, Big Star, and Emmett Rhodes, Shoes fashioned their own brand of melodic rock, experimenting with different sounds and gorgeous harmonies, creating a style distinct from anything else in popular music. They burst onto the scene with their self-produced indie classic Black Vinyl Shoes in 1977. What followed was an unparalleled string of stellar releases from 1979's Present Tense to 2012's Ignition. Through it all, it's their friendship and mutual respect that has kept this band striving to do their best for each other, while creating magic for us in the meantime.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please welcome to the stage. He's not just a musician, he's a storyteller, a producer, and a true pioneer in the indie music world. From the legendary band Shoes, Mr. Jeff Murphy. Hey, Jeff, Happy New Year.
Hi, thanks. You as well. Oh, it's good
you.
so far. I mean, we're early in, but hopefully it's going to pan out well.
I hope so too. How are you feeling?
A little rough. I mean, I'm a little rough. Came down with something, but fortunately, it's not debilitating. It's just a little inconvenient.
Well, just everybody let you know, Jeff very graciously kept this on his schedule. So as long as we don't ask him to sing. No.
Some people ask that even when I'm healthy. Please don't sing.
Well, I'm going to tell you and anyone watching, as with everything that I do here for the channel, I am doing this as a fan. I'm going to try not to gush too much and cock the whole thing up, but I can't promise anything. So please bear with me.
Well, I think that's, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know for our band, that's why we started a band, was we were fans, and we love music. We loved everything about it. And we were fans and students of music. We thought it'd be great to have a band. Wouldn't it be fun? And unfortunately, we didn't start until we were out of high school. We were college age. And when we decided to try to pick up instruments, I mean, nobody had any lessons, but it was the fandom that came first. We were fans.
It always seemed like you had the technical know-how ahead of time, right? So this is something that was interesting you before you were becoming a musician.
Yeah, I was into I was a stereo high fidelity buff, and from the age of, well, probably junior high on, I was into having a good stereo, or not good. I mean, you start off pretty simple at that age, but by the time I was in high school, I had a reel-to-reel tape recorder, a stereo, and then moved up during the ranks. But what really changed it was when the TX A3340 machine was released. That was a game changer, and it literally gave us our career, that machine. It was the first multi-track 4-channel machine where you could use all 4 channels and record something in time. You can't do that with a regular stereo machine.
Right.
We just started working with it, and it gave us a chance to learn how to write and sing and record and all at the same time. We were learning as we went along.
Were you guys already playing when the machine came out?
No, no. Let's see that I think that was either in late 73 or early 74 when I got the machine. I can't remember exactly. Um, but the first thing that we tried doing together, as the three of us as Shoes in 1974, in May, I think of 74, we started recording an album. And what really triggered it was I had come across an old Meisner record cutter,
Mm-hmm.
which was, a 1950 Meisner, where you could go into a store back then and cut a record. You get a blank disc and they put it on this machine, and it has a little lathe, and it would cut your music or your singing or whatever onto this disc, which to us was, wow, that was what we wanted, a record to hold that piece of plastic. So that it was restricted to 10 minutes on a side. So we figured, okay, we can do five 2-minute songs on each side. So we did this album called Heads or Tails.
Right, right,
And we only made, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 copies of that.
okay.
And John and Gary were both graphics people. They were into graphic design and stuff. So John put together a cover, and I was printing at that time. I took a job working in a envelope factory where we were printing. And so I knew the ins and outs of printing. So with our combined, everybody knew a little bit of different things. We were able to put this little album together. And but then Gary had to leave right away, and he was taking not a post-grad class, but he was going to Versailles, France, to study architecture um, through the University of Illinois. They had an extension in Versailles. So he left almost immediately after we finished one in Versailles, or after we finished Heads or Tails. And while he was gone, I think it was John hit on the idea, why don't we do a record and surprise him? You know? So so it was a good chance to learn. I mean, we kept working, and getting a little better and learning how to play. And we recorded. And then I found the guy who I had moved out with. I had moved into a little flat with a school friend of mine who was a drummer, and he was really a good drummer. And so we got him to play on the record, and it really changed us. Now we got a real drummer. Um, so we did this album called Heads or Tail, or One of Versailles, and he had been in a marching band in junior high, and they pressed up albums. And I was like, wait a minute. You mean you can get records pressed? You don't have to be CBS or Capitol? And he's like, yeah, I don't know. So I looked on the back, and here it had the name of, there was 2 record pressing plants in Chicago. So I called him up, and minimum you could do was 300. So that's what we did. We pressed up this album to surprise Gary. One in Versailles. We made 300 copies, and that was the forefather of what became Black Vinyl Shoes a couple years later, because we kept working and learning and improving. And by the time we did Black Vinyl, we were pretty good at it. We got much better at the recording and the mixing and manufacturing and all that.
The one thing about that album, One in Versailles, um, even at that point, you were really experimenting with different sounds and different instruments. I know on the song No I Don't, you have like a banjo and a mandolin.
Yeah.
On the song One in Versailles, you have this crazy synthesized guitar sound. And I mean, for such an early recording for you guys, it's pretty cool. I mean, how did all this experimentation come about?
Well, a big part of it was I love recording. I mean, I got my first tape recorder. I think I was 8, and it was a little tiny reel to reel. So it satisfied my geekness of mechanics and electronics, but it also was just cool to record TV shows, like
Right.
whatever was on at the time, the Munsters or A Man from Uncle or whatever, and play it back. I thought that was fascinating. So fast forward to working on One of Versailles, we didn't have a lot of money, and we needed a distortion unit, and my little tape recorder from when I was 8 didn't work anymore. But I took the electronics out of it and put it in a box and used it as a preamp. And that's that sound. It sounds like a guitar synthesizer, but it really is just this really ultra compressed, distorted sound of this little electronics out of this reel to reel. And I've used that gadget over the years on all kinds of stuff. I mean, we started referring to it as synthesized guitars just because it's what it sounded like, but it really wasn't an official thing. It was just the tone of it. And we got to the point where we started putting no keyboards on our record.
Right.
And not because we were anti-keyboard, but people would always ask us, who's playing the keyboard part? And we'd
Right.
say that there is no keyboard. That's a guitar. And so we were proud of the fact we always liked different sounds. And uh, like you were saying, some of the early recordings, man, anything was game. Mandolin, banjo. Um, it's just fun to make noise. So anything that helped us do that, or you'd get an idea for something, and if uh, um, you hear a sound in your head, you keep twisting until you get it sounds there, like you find it. That's the spot. Okay, that's it. And then you move on. I mean, that's the fun of recording.
You have talked about how you're not classically trained, you're just self-taught. So you picked up all these instruments and just figured it out from there?
Yeah, yeah. We
Wow.
just and that's why I, we don't like to refer to ourselves as musicians, because a real musician can say, "Oh, it's a 1-4-5 blues movement," and we're like, "Huh? What? What's a 1-4-5?" We don't know any of that. We don't know chords. We hear sounds in our head. I mean, we know major chords, but I don't, and I'll say, "Well, that chord where you put your fingers like this," and we all speak the same language because we all learned at the same time. It's like Pig Latin. It's not an official language, but yet we understand it between the three of us, so we can communicate on that level. But it's embarrassing to play with real musicians because they can do anything, and for us, we have to, like, even when we play live, um, it's a matter of memorizing a sequence of notes
Mm-hmm.
rather than knowing, oh, I'm in the key of C, so I'm in this box, or what, whatever that is. Um, I don't know. So,
Right.
but to me, it's all, and to all of us, it's just a matter of harmonics.
Mhm.
What works harmonically, um, instead of, well, mathematically, this should be you should go to a minor here.
Right.
I, I don't know. I didn't know. We didn't know what minor chords were. We were playing them. We just didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, and we say, that, it's like an A, but you move your first finger down a fret,
Mhm.
and play it like that, and say, oh, okay. So, but that's the way we've been for the last 50 years, and it's kind of it's a mixed blessing for sure.
Mhm.
Um, it's total freedom in one regard, where you can just do whatever you feel, whatever sounds right to you, and you don't worry about convention. When we finally got the chance when we signed the deal with Elektra, we went to record in England, and we were working at Trident, which is like, my God, I mean, Ziggy Stardust was done here. That's the piano that McCartney did "Hey Jude" on, and Elton John did the first three albums, and we were in that place. And as we were working, one of the engineers said, "You guys are very English in the way that you're working." He said, "You don't pay attention to what the meters say. You just do what you think is right." We said, yeah. I mean, it's just kind of the way it sounds good to us, you know. So there was an unconventional approach, even though English studios in particular were very regimented. They had this real, well, the old Beatle, Abbey Road stuff. They wore lab coats. I mean,
Right.
it was serious business. And depending on what color the coat was, to define your pecking order in the hierarchy. If you had a white coat, you were top of the line. But if you're brown, you're brown coated. Then you have to set up microphones. So it was a different thing.
There's something about that. There is absolutely no band that sounds like Shoes. I mean, nobody sounds like you have just such a distinct sound that's really just your own. I mean, how much of that do you think can you attribute to the fact that maybe because you don't have that classical training, you guys are, you're not following the same conventions that somebody who does have that training might, or, I mean, how much do you think that's contributed to your sound?
I think a lot. I think you're right. Part of it is oddly, I mean, our voices blend together in such a specific way, but um, Gary and I sound more similar than John and I. John's
Mhm.
voice is unique to the three of us,
Mhm.
and each one of us adds a different timbre to the mix,
Mhm.
and it's an interesting blend. And I mean, I remember Electra at one point saying to us, "You guys think you're a guitar band, but you're a vocal band. That's what you will remember about you is your vocals," which is great. I mean, because we love that's part of what we love in the music that we're attracted to are the harmonies and the vocal structures and the counter melodies, that Beach Boy, Beatle stuff. That to me is really wonderful when you get a chance to do that. There's nothing that gives you goosebumps on the back of your neck like having a bunch of voices making a nice harmony fit together. It just really fires off the endorphins.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I think nobody does it like you guys do. So
Oh, thanks.
yeah. Well,
It's fun to do.
is it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's why when we sing on other people's records, it's really easy. And what we've started doing recently, or I should say, the part of the reason why we've done it is with the music industry in total chaos right now. Um, if we had a brand new Shoes record done, finished today, what would we do with it?
Mhm.
It used to be a very clear path, or to us, we had definite goals we could set.
Mhm.
Um, you write the songs, you record the song, you get it recorded, you get it on a piece of vinyl, you promote it, you play live to promote it, you get it on the radio. And, of course, then videos came along, you get a video to promote it. Most of that's gone
Mhm.
because you don't press up hard copies anymore. Um, so there is no piece of plastic. I mean, thank goodness vinyl is still around.
Yeah.
Uh, I have a pretty extensive vinyl collection. I still love to open an album and smell that PVC and
Yeah.
flip it over and look at that artwork and it still gives you a thrill. Um, but if we had a brand new album, it's not very gratifying to just release it as a download.
Right.
It's a file. It's etherware. There's no tangible thing. So that's been the frustration to us.
Mhm.
Um, what do we do? What do we? So the easy thing for us has been if we sing on other records, we don't have to deal with the back end. They do the promotion and the marketing and the manufacturing and all that, and we can just be musicians, add
Mhm.
guitars and do all that, or mix it or whatever. We've taken on several different roles, working in different things, sometimes producing other people, sometimes just mixing or singing or playing or whatever. Um, and we do want to do more shoe music. I mean, this year marks the 50th anniversary of Shoes, so we really should have something new coming. But how to release it is the big question.
Right.
That's the question.
Why I just got really excited when you just said that the new you should do a new shoes album this year. Have you
Well, I
guys
know
been?
that.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I know that Gary has a solo album, um, but he hasn't decided how to release it.
Okay.
Um, Back when I did mine, which was, wow, 14 years ago now, part of the reason why I did that was because it was so long between Shoes records.
Hmm.
But another part of it was I had just bought my first digital workstation, which is back there somewhere. Um, and it was a chance to try that out, to kind of learn the ins and outs of it. And that was a lot of fun. And so it also it gave me a chance to kind of do songs that were maybe not necessarily shoe songs. They were
Hmm.
maybe not something that we put on a shoes record, too laid back or whatever. So it was a fun exercise, and I had fun with it. Um, I may do another, I don't know. But I'll definitely keep working. There's no doubt about that. And with John and Gary, I mean, we literally see each other every day.
Really?
Yeah, we're still best friends. I mean, it's always been the friendship first. If the friendship dies, the band is over. But that
Hmm.
hasn't happened. It's been 50 years. So
Wow. It
plugging
strikes me
away.
that there's not a lot of bands that can say that, even when there are brothers in the band. I mean, you look at the Kinks or Oasis or something, and those guys are ready to kill each other all the time.
Yeah.
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 And you guys, 50 years in, you're still buddies. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I think part of that comes from the bond with John and I. It was strengthened when we were little kids because our father left when we were young. He just abandoned us. And right about the time I got my first tape recorder. Um, and that draw, then so now it's you, John and I and our mom. It was the three of us.
hmm.
So you bond together. It you defend. There's a lot of sibling rivalry when you're a kid, but it became kind of obvious then that you have to stick up for each other because it's us against the world sort of thing, and that
Right.
bond. We've always just been best friends. And John has always been our musical compass. John was always the one that was uh, reading articles and finding out about Big Star.
Hmm.
I mean, in 1972, he's like, check this album out, Big Star, you got to hear it. And then, and then John and Gary was um, at school. John would come home and earn money because back then you could kind of put yourself through college. And John would come home, earn some money, go back for a semester, then come home, earn some money, go back for. So in their absence, they would write back and forth letters about the band, and there was no band. It didn't exist, but it was this idea. It was this pipe dream, this fantasy thing. Um, we just did dig out a drawing that John had done of it was a fake Rolling Stone cover.
Hmm.
And that was before I was really involved in the band. And I think the date on it is October 8th, 1973. And it's John and Gary, caricatures of John and Gary on stage and these hands, like worshiping. And it was, had the Rolling Stone logo across the top and talked about shoe mania. And it was just this ridiculous pipe dream. But Gary framed it and kept it all these years.
Really?
And they use that or a bit of it in this upcoming power pop movie that's coming.
Right. I've heard it. I've seen some things about it. Do you know when it's supposed to come out?
This year, I've seen about the first, maybe third of the film.
Okay.
It's still, I mean, just kind of up to the point where it was about us.
Okay.
So we could see kind of what led up to it. It's interesting. I said, it's all completely in my wheelhouse. Everything, all the people he's talking to, all the people that are interviewed. Man, it's just a feast for me because I come on, Badfinger and Raspberries and
Yeah.
and Big Star and all these guys, um, Emmett Rhodes and stuff like that we were into. Emmett Rhodes, another example of something John found in 1970 that nobody knew who he was,
Right.
but was hugely influential on us. To think that somebody could record themselves. Wow, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And when you're learning like we were, all you have to do is hit the erase button, and no one knows you made a mistake. That was the wonderful thing about it.
You bring up all these artists. It reminds me that we're recording this kind of on the heels of the Cherry Red release, Looking for the Magic, American Power Pop in the 70s, right? Which
Yeah.
includes Boys Don't Lie from Black Vinyl Shoes. It strikes me that the term power pop was not widely being used when a lot of these songs were being recorded. And even among all the songs on that collection, there's really a wide range of styles, right? So first off, when do you remember first hearing that term power pop, and when did people start using it to refer to what you guys do?
It was shortly after we released Black Vinyl,
Mm.
when we got in contact with Greg Shaw
Mm.
from Bomp magazine. That I think might have been the first time, or maybe there was a writer in Chicago named Carrie Baker, who was one of the very earliest supporters of the band, and went on to a great career as a publicist for music. And I think that might have been when we first started hearing that term. To me, my definition of power pop was different, and everyone seems to have a different criteria. But to me, breaking it down was pop music was popular music.
Mm-hmm.
And power pop meant that it had some aggression to it. Not Barbra Streisand pop, but certainly
Mm-hmm.
not power. And not Black Sabbath power, but not necessarily pop, but sometimes. And that's the thing about power pop, is it seems like no one lives there full time.
Right.
They weave in and out of it. Even the bands that are known for being power pop. I mean, I think a lot of people might point to the Beatles as a touchstone of power pop music. And certainly a song like Paperback Writer, which to me is that is ground zero. I mean, Paperback Writer. God, I love that song. It has everything a geek like me loves. Technology, that echo, that repeated echo that degenerates, the great harmonies, the great guitar riff, everything, I mean, that was it to me. And they didn't call it that back then. But to me, Fleetwood Mac is power pop. Like when Lindsay does a song like "Go Your Own Way," oh man, I mean that's one of those songs. But people don't put them in that category. But they've started to. They've started to broaden the horizons of it and put in bands like Tom Petty, a song like "Last Dance with Mary Jane," or I mean, it's a categorization. I know people like to have a nice handle to carry it around with, but it can be very constricting. And for a while, it became it defined bad Beatle imitators in skinny ties and white shirts, and uh, but thank goodness, hopefully that's kind of gone, and people are seeing it's melodic rock. That's what it is. I mean, a song like when I mentioned Black Sabbath, for instance, I mean, hell, I like some Black Sabbath stuff. And I think that some of the Ozzy stuff, like "No More Tears," that's a pop song. That's
Right.
not a metal song. Or "Mama, I'm Coming Home." Really nice harmonies, great melody. I mean, I wouldn't put it on my uh, uh, definitive list of power pop, but I certainly think it falls in what I think is that wide range of category that fits. But even the Beatles, I mean, on the same album that they did Helter Skelter, they did Blackbird
Right.
on the same record. I mean, and neither one of them fits in power pop, really. So it's a very broad category.
If you look at your album, Present Tense, I mean, the second song on there, uh, Too Late, a song that you're probably the best known for, um, quintessential power pop song. But by the end of the album, um, the song I Don't Want to Hear It is, I mean, it could be just as, at home on a Ramones record.
Yeah, that was the influence, of course. I mean, even the spelling of it, the misspelling of "wanna hear it." Um, it was we were obviously into the Ramones, but the Ramones saw themselves as a pop band. I mean,
Yeah.
they kind of started out being a bubblegum band. I mean, that was kind of their whole thing. Love the Ramones.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of our tip of the hat to them. And that's what I say. It's when people say to us, we had a song on our last album called Hot Mess,
Yes.
which was and some people gave us grief for it, saying, "Oh, this doesn't sound like Shoes. This sounds more like a Rolling Stone song." Hey, I love the Stones.
Yeah.
We and that was I've said to people that may be the most fun we've ever had recording a song, because the album itself was pretty much done. We had everything, all the songs we needed. I think everything might have even been mixed. Maybe we had one more song to mix. And Gary said, I know we don't need another song, but I've got these chords. And what do you think? And he had it just put them down to a drum machine. And I mean, and this never happens like this, but I said, I know exactly what I want to do. Plug me in.
Mm.
And we plugged in an amp, and I sat down in the control room and I started playing to it. And John said, I know what I know what I want to sing. So John starts writing lyrics next to me we never work that way. For us, we spend a lot of time thinking about it.
Mm.
But in this case, it was completely impulsive, and it was so much fun. Part of it was John's lyrics were really pretty dirty.
Yeah.
And he was trying to make us laugh is what he was trying to do. And he succeeded. God, I came home about 2 o'clock that morning, and my wife said, "You were still laughing when you came in the door." I said, "I know, we had so much fun doing that song, and it went so fast." We buzzed through it in just a few quick little sessions, and God, that was fun. So it was really a great memory to leave that album with. To say that was the last thing that we did on the record. Um, so to me, it's such a broad spectrum that's acceptable, and hopefully people accept listen to what we do and can stretch a bit.
Listening to, for example, Shoes on Ice, no question, you guys are a rock band. That's a really rockin' set of songs that you guys have there. And even the songs that on the record sound, you might say we'll put quotes around it, power pop. When you play it live, it was like, this is a rock band, no question about it.
Yeah, part of it is when you play live, you realize that you can't slow it down too much.
Mhm.
And you're certainly constrained by the fact that you only have 4 guys playing, where a record you may have a half a dozen different little guitar parts that weave in and out to create an effect or whatever. Live, you got to strip it down to the essentials, and that's kind of the funny thing that what we do when we play live, we become a cover band of ourselves. We go back and we listen to the record and we say, okay, we have to kind of create a hybrid guitar part, take that one seems to be important and this part seems important. So we'll, combine those somehow. It drives me crazy sometimes on stage because I end up having what I call doing the dance, because you're singing background vocals and playing rhythm, and then you got to step on a pedal and then sing a harmony and then step on another pedal and do the lead and then step on the pedal. So you're dancing around, changing these to try to capture the different modes that you've done on the record. Sometimes I'm successful and sometimes not so much. Um, uh, but yeah, you do strip it down to the more, and I've noticed that, my God, we play them fast live. I mean, I guess that's
Yeah.
adrenaline, but they get really fast. We just did a quick little one-off gig a couple of months ago. And our normal drummer that we've used for the last 25 years, Johnny Richardson, wasn't available. He had a family reunion he was hosting at his farm, so we couldn't do it.
Mhm.
And it kind of popped up last minute. It was for the Illinois Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Mm.
They're having this party for the pre-induction ceremony, and they asked us to play. And it kind of ballooned. It was like, will you come down? Hey, you want to come down to this thing? Oh, yeah, okay, we'll come down. Bring a guitar. Okay, yeah, okay, I'll bring a guitar. You can do whatever you want. What? Yeah, can you play a song? Yeah. And so then said something to John and Gary. I said, you want to go down and do this thing? John said, well, we should do 3 songs then, because we strive to maintain equity between the 3 of us. It's very easy for the press to want to focus on the brothers,
Mhm.
but really it's the 3 of us. We are in a 3-man sack race. Nobody wants to lead, nobody wants to follow. You want everyone to run at the same pace.
Mhm.
And we go to great lengths to do that. So when we put on a record or play live, it's always done in 3s,
Mhm.
multiples of 3, 15-song albums, 12-song albums, whatever. That's how the song Tomorrow Night came about. Was Greg Shaw asked us to re-record the song "Okay" from Black Vinyl for a single for his label. We said, okay, great. It was the first time someone was hiring us as a label. And we thought, wow, that's fantastic. Got a single coming out. What do we do on the B side? Well, how do you take a 2-side single to represent 3 writers? So the solution was Gary and I will sit down and write a song together.
Mhm.
So that's what we did. We wrote Tomorrow Night. I had started this song that I was kicking around. I played it for Gary. Gary and I hashed out changes and things, and that became Tomorrow Night. So it was evidence of how hard we struggle to make sure that everyone is equally represented.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, you guys have been a trio since Skip Meyer left the band in around 84 or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that the reason why you guys haven't taken on a full-time drummer? I know you've worked with different drummers for a long period of time. You mentioned John Richardson. I know you worked with other drummers as well. I mean, do you like to mix it up and have different people, or was it about maintaining that core uh, trio?
I guess the weird thing is, I mean, we had one when we did Heads or Tails, the first thing, we were all done and there was no drums.
Mhm.
And John and Gary said, well, we got a buddy from high school has got a drum set up in his attic. Maybe we can get him to put drums on it. So I carted the machine over to his house and we added the drums after everything else was done.
Wow.
So that was one drummer. And then when I moved out, Barry Shoemaker, who was the guy that I was sharing a flat with, he played on One of Versailles and also on Bazooka, the album before Black Vinyl. And then we did our first show ever with him.
Mm.
So it was our first live gig was in 1976. And after we did that show, I don't think his girlfriend was crazy about him being on stage, and he quit. He quit the band. And of course he was living with me, and it was all band. I mean, it was basically a converted garage is where we were living. And everything, the living room was completely jammed with PA and drums and amps. The recording gear was in the kitchen. We would string mics off into the bedroom or even the bathroom. Um, and so he had to move out because there was, but we parted on great terms. It was sad to see him go. So that was drummer number two. Then Skip came along. Skip had been going out with Gary's sister, so we knew him from that, and was playing in a local cover band. And we liked him. He was very congenial, and we got along great with Skip. Skip wasn't crazy about the studio
Mm.
because drummers like to drum, and horses got to run, like they say.
Yeah.
But what happened is, we would spend 3 or 4 months recording an album, and after the first week or so, he's done. He's done. We got the drums, we got the basic track, and we'll work on the songs after that. So he was bored to tears. It was always like a vacation for him. We went to England to record Present Tense. We were there for 2 months, and he was done after the first week.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so he had, 7 weeks of hanging around at the resort with, at the manor, which was 2 swimming pools and a cordon bleu chef and all female staff and tennis courts. I'd get up in the morning and Skip and I would play tennis before we'd start recording. And but he tired of it, I think. And when we split with Elektra, we built our own studio. I mean, literally, the 4 of us hammered and nailed and built our first commercial studio. And once that was up and running and we started recording, he would come by less and less.
Hmm.
I mean, we sat him down and said, "Look, you can still be part of this. You just have to show up."
Mm-hmm.
And he just faded away. We still were friends with him, but he just didn't want to spend the time in the studio. And it was a tough time for us too. I think after losing a major label deal creates a lot of tension, and sometimes the release of that tension is to strike out at each other.
Hmm.
And not even striking out as much as you just get to be more, I don't know, there's an intensity that happens like, oh God, we got to do something that's going to make a difference here, that's going to be successful so that we can carry on. And so Skip quit, and we finished kind of piecing the drums together on the rest of Silhouette ourselves. And then we brought in Rick Menk, and Rick played on half of, Rick played on Stolen Wishes.
Okay.
But because we had gone from 48 track recording, we had literally gone from using 2 24-track machines synchronized together. So we had 48 channels to work with, to when we went back to our own studio, we were only 16 track.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hell, we'd use that many tracks doing drums. I mean, you'd say kick drum, snare drum top, snare drum bottom, left rack, right rack, floor tom, left overhead, right overhead, left room, right room, bass drum far away. I mean, you would have all these mics that you could record separately. Now we're on 16 tracks again. You have to kind of condense things and pre-mix them. But the advent, what was coming in, and we were really early in trying to use it, was triggered drums.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't quite have the technology together yet. But we had Rick play on pads, on drum triggers. And that way, if he was, we could manipulate the drums after he was gone, because he was only available at certain times. And we had him play real cymbals at the time. And there were still real crashes and stuff. But that way we could change the drum kit right out from underneath him and get a tone that worked better with the song. But more importantly, all you needed was a time code sync, because that was all stored in the computer as pulses of when he hit the drums. So it didn't eat up any of the tracks, analog tracks on the tape machine, other than the time code.
Mm-hmm.
So that was our solution on Stolen Wishes. That's why that album, the drums can sound a little artificial, because they didn't have the technology that they have now, where if you use a program like BFD, for instance, when you hit a snare drum, it sounds different depending on where you hit it, how hard you hit it. And so what they'll do is they'll make maybe 20 or 30 samples of that snare drum at different depths, different strengths, instead of you just turning it the same sound down when it's quiet and loud. It actually is a different drum sound because he's playing it quieter. It's a different tone. The technology wasn't there for that yet. As a matter of fact, we called the guy that had designed the program Cakewalk.
Okay.
And we said, this is what we're trying to do. We want to synchronize the SMPTE time code to Cakewalk so we can do these drums. And he said, I'm not quite there yet. He says, I know what you're trying to do, but I can't do it yet. It was a system called FSK. And what that meant was, when you started the tape machine, the time code would trigger the computer, but then it was freewheeling. It was just running. And then when you stopped it, it would stop. But what it did in between there, you had no control over.
Mm-hmm.
A SMPTE time code references back and forth 30 times a second. So it's constantly updating it and making sure, but the technology wasn't quite there to synchronize software quite yet. I remember when we finished that album, I said to Gary, I can't wait to get back to real drums, because I missed it, because instead of listening to drums, you're looking at time code and stuff, and it was boring. So when we did Propeller, we had Rick come in and play on half, and we used Mike Zelenko from Material Issue on the other half of it, and then we went to tour, and John Richardson. So we started working with Johnny, and he's kind of been the go-to guy for the last 25 years.
You bring up working in the studio like that. So you guys have never really recorded live. It's mostly piecing it together or doing overdubs and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, in the early days, that was kind of more the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's because, you write in, I mean, I guess the good and the bad is that we used to have this thing called demoitis, which was Gary would do a demo or I would do a demo, and we'd bring it in, and we'd work it up, and we'd say, oh yeah, that's great. Now let's do it again as the real version, the real album. Well, it's never quite the same. Something always changes. And when you capture that, whatever it is that makes you excited about a song, it's hard to reproduce.
Right.
And I like to say that the first time you do something, it's inspiration. And the next time you do it, it's imitation. You're copying what you had done. When we recorded Present Tense, we were in England, and we would always refer back to the demo to remember what we played. I don't remember what the part was. What did I play? Because we don't write music. We had to listen to it. And it drove Mike Stone, who was our co-producer on that, drove him crazy. He hated it, And sometimes you couldn't get the same feel. One of my favorite examples of that is the song Your Imagination,
mm-hmm.
off of a Tongue Twister. It was originally called Time to Make It.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a song that I had started out called Bad Habit. And I was seeing a girl from Rockford. So I would leave for the weekend, it was an hour and a half drive each way. And so John and Gary, one weekend when I was gone, took this song and reworked it and came up with the coolest bass intro, just this really cool, growly, rolly bass thing. And it started the song. And when the song started, I said, wow, this is really cool. What is this? And then it was the song I had started. I'm like, what? And that sound was just so cool. Well, then when we went to do it for the album, we couldn't capture it.
Mm.
We couldn't recapture that sound because we, didn't have the same gear, the same attitude. Every day your approach is different. Another example, that song "I Don't Miss You" from Present Tense. Skip had a hell of a time playing that in the studio because the original demo, he was basically going boom, bap, boom, bap, boom, bap. And we had a Roland Space Echo, RE201 Space Echo tape delay. And it had multi playback heads. So I fed that into that thing, and that simple boom, bap, boom, bap turned into so it created this syncopation that drove the song. And when we went to England, we didn't take that unit with us because we thought, oh man, this is a professional studio. They're going to have everything that we need, even that, they'll have something better than that. So we didn't take it with us. We were wrong. They didn't have it. And we couldn't recreate it with what they had. We couldn't get that same feel. It's the best we could approximate. If you listen to we released a compilation of the demos called Double Exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to the drum pattern on that, it's much more syncopated than what ended up on black vinyl. Although ironically, a few months ago, we got contacted by, there's a hip hop artist named Travis Scott.
Mm-hmm.
And he sampled the drums on that song and used it in his song on his new album, Circus Maximus. We're laughing because it's like, wow. I mean, here's this thing. And I remember Skip was so frustrated at one point. He took the sticks and he threw them across the room. And it's the most upset I'd ever seen Skip because he was so easygoing. And we ended up having to go into town and buying a metronome so that he could just play just this simple thing with the metronome, and then we would add the echo later. But yeah, it's funny how those things come around.
Oh yeah. I have to tell you, I had heard about the sample in the Travis Scott song, and I know who Travis Scott is. I didn't know any of his music. And so, but since I heard it had that sample in it, I wanted to listen to the song. And so I'm listening to the song, and my older son walks in and he just kind of stops and it's like, "You're listening to Travis Scott?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah. I said, "Oh, it's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. Listen to this drum on this." And
Yeah, I'm down with it.
Yeah. So I got some cred with my kid for that. So
Yeah, we had heard about it, but at the time they kept referring they didn't have the title, it just kept coming up as TBD.
Mhm.
So when the album came out, I kind of scanned through all of it and I said, I don't hear it. And I mentioned it to a friend of ours. And when we did this show, one of the cameramen, they had a video crew there, was his son.
Mhm.
And after the show, he said to me, "This is your song." He pulls it up on his phone. He says, "This is you guys." And he played it for us. And it was loud and I couldn't really hear. And I said, "Well, maybe you're right." And I listened to it. Well, John and Gary, we were standing talking, and I called it up and I said, "This is the song that Mike says that it is." And I call it up. And the first 30 seconds of the song, there's no drum at all.
Mhm.
So I probably didn't get past the intro when I listened to it myself. And then once the song kicks in, you go, that's it. That's
Yeah.
it. I think it's funny online. People are saying, "Oh, these guys he ripped off Kanye." This is he ripped off this. I said,
Oh,
well,
boy.
if he did, then that came from somewhere too.
That's
But
right. Kanye owes you some money.
yeah. So it's a funny thing. we haven't really gone out and talked about it too much. My wife says, why don't you post it that's your song, part of your song? And I said, nah, I don't know if it would if it would do this his audience that much good to know that it was done 45 years ago by three old white guys. I don't know. I mean, like you said, listening to his stuff gives you more cred with your kid than I think he would get saying, "Oh yeah, that's a shoe sample."
Stay tuned for part 2 of my interview with Jeff Murphy. Till then, this is Bijan for Pop Rocks Radio. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.